Welcome to the Japan's Modern Castles video series. This third episode examines the modern history of Hiroshima Castle. I'm Oleg Benish, and I teach East Asian history at the University of York in the UK. I am especially interested in modern uses of the pre-modern past, and castles are some of Japan's most important heritage sites. Professor Ron Zwigenberg of Pennsylvania State University and I have been studying the modern history of Japanese castles for many years, and examine this in depth in our book, Japan's Castles, Citadels of Modernity in War and Peace. Japan's hundreds of castles are visited by millions of tourists annually. Castles feature in countless films, novels, anime, and manga, and are closely identified with the history of the samurai warriors that ruled Japan until the late 19th century. With their broad moats, massive walls, and towering keeps, castles are seen as enduring symbols of medieval Japan. However, many of the castles we see today are often as much products of Japan's turbulent modern history as they are ancient strongholds. From the Meiji Restoration that toppled the Tokugawa warrior government in 1868 onward, castles have been among the most important sites in revolution, war, and peace in modern Japan. In this video series, we explore the modern history of specific Japanese castles through virtual tours, combining Google Earth Pro with historic maps and images, as well as photos taken on visits to countless castle sites over the past 20 years. We will show how these sites have come to be, and to look at the remaining artifacts that bear witness to the layers of their recent past. In this episode, we look at Hiroshima Castle, which is sometimes called the Carp Castle or Rijo. Today, Hiroshima is a city of about 1 million people located about 1.5 hours from Osaka by bullet train, and is the economic center of Hiroshima Prefecture. The city of Hiroshima is spread across the broad river delta of the Ota River, which flows into the Seto Inland Sea. Reflecting this history, the Ujina port south of the city has long been one of the main gateways into Hiroshima. The main road leading from the port to the city center, past City Hall and through the central business district, ends at the entrance to the castle and is called Carp Castle Road. Hiroshima is known around the world for the atomic bombing that devastated the city in 1945, killing at least 70,000 people. The legacy of this terrible event dominates narratives around Hiroshima, and the most famous tourist sites in the city today are related to the bombing. The main sites and memorials are in and around the Peace Park, designed by the architect Tange Kenzo in the 1950s. Directly next to the park is the A-bomb dome, which was preserved in its damaged state after the bombing. The events of August 1945 understandably overshadow the much longer history of Hiroshima. Several hundred meters to the north of the main A-bomb commemoration sites, Hiroshima Castle is an eloquent witness to the turbulent modern history of the city from the late 19th century onward. The original castle took its completed form in the late 16th century, and was more than 4 times the size of the current castle area that is enclosed by the inner moat. The outer moats used to stretch roughly from the Hokujo Street in the north, Hakushima Street in the east, Aioi Street in the south, and with fortifications extending to the river in the west. In the main bailey at the center of the castle was the keep, or Tenshu, which was the most prominent building of Hiroshima Castle until it was destroyed in 1945. Having survived for more than 3 centuries, the keep was declared a national treasure in 1931, and the castle as a whole remains an important historic site. Hiroshima's strategic location on the inland sea made it an important military site throughout its history. In the 1860s, as the declining Tokugawa shogunate sought to reimpose control over rebellious domains in the west of Japan, Hiroshima became a military center for the shogun's forces. Like many other domains, Hiroshima quickly changed sides as the tide began to turn against the Tokugawa, and the shogunate collapsed in 1868. After the establishment of the new imperial Meiji government, the now obsolete Hiroshima Castle was taken over by the Imperial Japanese Army, along with dozens of other castles across the country. Given its significance, Hiroshima Castle came to host one of the first 6 major garrisons in 1873. The Imperial Japanese Army expanded over the following decades, making the whole Motomachi area of Hiroshima around the castle a military zone. It is important to note that although the army took over the former castle, there was little appreciation for pre-modern structures or heritage. Many walls and buildings were torn down without hesitation to make space for modern military structures, while the outer moats were filled in. As the city of Hiroshima grew rapidly in the late 19th century, much of the original castle grounds were lost. The former moats were now under tram lines, as seen here at the Kamiyacho intersection. The wooded area behind the building on the left was the military garrison and therefore restricted space. Hiroshima Castle's moment in the sun came during the First Sino-Japanese War of 1894-95, which was fought over control over Korea. This was Japan's first major modern war, and the Meiji Emperor moved to Hiroshima to direct military campaigns on the continent. The emperor left his residence in the imperial castle in Tokyo and headed to the west to set up camp in the new imperial general headquarters in Hiroshima Castle. This woodblock print from the time shows the emperor arriving in Hiroshima. Along with the emperor, the imperial diet also moved to another set of buildings in Hiroshima during the war, temporarily making the city the de facto political and military capital of Japan. The 5th Army Division was headquartered in and around Hiroshima Castle and spearheaded most subsequent Japanese invasions of the Korean Peninsula and the Asian mainland, including during the Sino-Japanese War and the Russo-Japanese War of 1904-05. These conflicts transformed Hiroshima into a major military center, and soldiers from all over Japan traveled to Hiroshima to set sail for the continent from Ujina Harbor. The scale of the military's presence in Hiroshima can be clearly seen in this 1939 photograph, and the large military buildings are apparent and contrast with the tightly packed residential areas that surround the castle garrison. This U.S. Army map from the 1940s labels some of these, including the 5th Division headquarters in the center of the main bailey, the 11th Infantry Regiment, the 5th Field Artillery Regiment, and the 5th Transport Battalion, as well as the military police. One important facility was the Garrison Hospital, which was originally set up in the 1870s and continued to expand along with the Empire's military activities. Soldiers and medics studied and trained here, and troops were also treated and convalesced from injuries and diseases picked up on duty in Japan and overseas. Following victory in the Sino-Japanese War in 1895, the Imperial General Headquarters building in the center of the castle became one of the most important sites in Hiroshima, and featured in postcards, tourist guides, and commemorative volumes. This postcard is labeled as an aerial photograph of the Imperial General Headquarters, but it also features the castle keep, along with barracks and other military facilities. In Hiroshima, as elsewhere in Japan, many sites visited by or associated with the emperor became semi-sacred places of commemoration and major tourist sites. The headquarters building commemorated the special connection between the emperor, the city of Hiroshima, and the 5th Division, and the main bailey as a whole was labeled as the Imperial General Headquarters when the emperor was present in wartime or during military maneuvers. In another connection, the 5th Division was known as the Karp Division, after the Karp castle it occupied. Having been rejected as useless feudal relics in the 1870s and 1880s, castles came to play an important role as the Japanese military sought to link modern soldiers and sailors with an idealized martial past. The samurai warriors of the distant past were portrayed as the spiritual models for all Japanese, who were expected to act according to the code of Bushido, the way of the warrior. It is important to note that Bushido was largely an invention of the late 19th century, although it was often portrayed as an ancient ethic. In the 1920s and 1930s especially, castles became key sites for demonstrating the connection between Japan's ancient warriors and modern military technology. Postcards became a popular medium, and thousands of postcards of Hiroshima Castle were produced. The castle keep was designated a national treasure in 1931, further raising its profile. Expos and other events were also popular occasions for celebrating castles and the military, and were often held on parade grounds in castles. In Hiroshima, the location for both military and civilian events was the Western Parade Ground, which also hosted the headquarters of the Hiroshima Military Police. One major exhibition was the 1932 Emergency Times Expo, centered around national defense like many expos at the time. In addition to the castle, the other venue of this exhibition was the Hiroshima Prefectural Industrial Promotion Hall, which had been built along the riverside just to the south of the military garrison in 1915, and was one of the main sites in the city. At the 1932 Expo, 2 weeks after the Manchurian incident, the Industrial Promotion Hall served as the Manchuria Pavilion, with a temporary Chinese-style gate in front, and exhibits about Manchurian products and the history of the Japanese Empire inside. The military role of Hiroshima Castle intensified along with the war in the 1930s and 1940s. In August 1945, Hiroshima Castle, together with most of central Hiroshima, was destroyed by the first atomic bomb to be used in war. In addition to the countless civilian deaths in the city, as the site of the headquarters for Japan's Western Army, an estimated 20,000 Japanese Imperial Army soldiers perished in Hiroshima Castle. Almost all of the structures in and around the castle were destroyed, as seen in these photographs from before and after the bombing. The castle keep was blown over by the shockwave, although it did not burn, and many survivors later used the timber from castle buildings and other structures to build shacks along the river. The largest cluster of these rough dwellings in the former castle garrison later became known as the A-bomb slum, and was occupied until the 1970s. Like the rest of Japan, Hiroshima was occupied by the Allied forces in 1945. Whereas most of the country was occupied by American soldiers, sensitivity around the atomic bombing and potential local hostility contributed to the use of Australian troops in the occupation of Hiroshima. The castle remained abandoned immediately after the war, with many people viewing the destruction of the castle as a symbolic punishment for the sins of militarism and the imperial wartime ideology. Far from ignoring the castle's military role, in the late 1940s, the loss of the castle keep was even celebrated as symbolizing the transformation of Hiroshima from a military base into a city of peace. With the military gone, a new stretch of road to the center of the castle was named MacArthur Road, after Douglas MacArthur, the American general who took the Japanese surrender and led the occupation. After the occupation, this road became an extension of Carp Castle Road and dropped MacArthur's name. Perhaps more fantastically, there was even a plan to use the barren base of the keep as a pedestal to construct a replica of the Statue of Liberty in New York City, which would represent the goddess of peace. This plan was ultimately not realized, although artists' renderings featured in the local newspaper. Almost immediately after 1945, the devastated city of Hiroshima became the site of so-called atomic tourism. Early visitors were mainly Allied soldiers who came to view the ruins and the few structures that remained standing. Almost all of the buildings in Hiroshima had been blown over by the force of the blast and incinerated by the fires, and the few left partially standing had to be pulled down. While other buildings were torn down, this structure was preserved in its ruined state for future generations, known as the A-bomb dome, thereby retaining its status as one of the most important symbols of Hiroshima into the post-war period, even though its meaning had changed completely. In the 1950s, the A-bomb Dome became the focal point of a new Peace Park and Memorial Museum that is one of the most famous sites in Japan today. Although the plan to build a replica Statue of Liberty was not realized, other new structures gradually came to represent Hiroshima's recovery and new identity. One important symbol of Hiroshima's transformation, located south of the castle just to the north of the A-bomb Dome, was the People's Baseball Stadium, torn down in 2012. Like the former 5th Army Division, the baseball team was named after the castle, the Hiroshima Carp. This transformation of castles from military sites to sporting venues was common throughout Japan. In Hiroshima, the 6th National Youth Athletic Competition was held in the castle in 1950, and a mock castle keep was reconstructed for the occasion, but with a roller coaster circling the structure. This attraction drew enormous crowds, demonstrating Hiroshima residents' nostalgia for their Carp Castle, and leading to subsequent calls for a permanent reconstruction of the lost keep. This goal was finally realized in 1958, as the Hiroshima Castle Keep was reconstructed out of steel-reinforced concrete, as were dozens of castle keeps throughout Japan in the 1950s and 1960s. From the outside, the keep was made to look very similar to the lost original structure, although there were important differences. As in many other castles, modifications were made to accommodate a viewing platform, bigger windows, and other amenities. This was standard procedure in castle reconstructions, and was not seen as especially problematic at the time. When the castle keep was finished, it was celebrated in various modern and traditional ceremonies. The reconstruction was one of the highlights of the Hiroshima Recovery Expo, which celebrated Hiroshima's rise from the ashes and was visited by more than 900,000 people. The hyper-modern and pre-modern themes of the expo came together in the castle keep, which was a very modern structure that stood for Hiroshima's connection with the past. The outer appearance of the keep represented its pre-modern heritage, and the builders even dived into the moat looking for original roof tiles and other objects. On the inside, the keep reflects 1950s building technology. There are several exhibit halls, which, like the rest of the castle site, focus very much on the pre-modern heritage of Hiroshima. The legacy of the samurai dominates the explanatory boards and displays, and visitors can don samurai costumes and helmets. Although many visitors to Hiroshima Castle today are disappointed by the simplistic modern interior of the keep, when it was built, there was little thought of restoring the castle building beyond its symbolic outer architecture. It was a symbol of the city's past, connecting and also contrasting with the modernist buildings downriver at the Peace Park. This symbolic connection between the samurai past and the peaceful post-war period obscured the modern military function of the castle. This was controversial when the keep was reconstructed, and many Hiroshima residents mobilized against the project. The castle was seen as a symbol of Bushido and militarism that had supposedly led to the destruction of Hiroshima. Others saw the reconstruction as a colossal waste of money. In Hiroshima and elsewhere, many opponents of the reconstruction argued that castles were places of oppression of the common people, and were built by coercing and sacrificing peasants. In spite of the opposition, the castle keep was reconstructed, and once again became an important tourist destination. It now represents one of two popular narratives around the history of Hiroshima, which coexist somewhat uneasily. One is the pre-modern history of Hiroshima as an important domain, centering on the castle and the nearby Itsukushima Island's shrines, which are famous throughout the world. The other popular narrative focuses on the Peace Park and stresses Hiroshima's post-1945 role as a world peace city. There is little room for Hiroshima's modern military heritage in either of these narratives. As a result, the casual visitor to the castle park will miss many of the artifacts of the military facilities that once dominated the site, or at least be unaware of their significance. The main bailey of the castle, which also contains the keep, has some of the most important artifacts. Most visitors now approach the castle from the south, through a wooden gate and guard tower, which were reconstructed in 1994 using original methods and materials. Upon crossing the moat and entering the gate, the visitor almost immediately crosses another bridge into the main bailey of the castle. One reminder of the castle's military past is the ruins of the Meiji Emperor's former Imperial General Headquarters building just across from the keep. This was a subject of considerable controversy in the lead-up to the centenary of the Meiji Restoration in 1968. In the late 1960s, there was a strong movement to reconstruct the Imperial General Headquarters building, but this was ultimately defeated in the face of criticism of the project as a resurrection of militarism and ultranationalism. Today, the main bailey of the castle is dominated by another artifact of the wartime, the Hiroshima Gokoku Shrine, or Nation Protecting Shrine. These shrines were established throughout Japan and its empire in the late 1930s as branch shrines of the Yasukuni Shrine in Tokyo, the central shrine for the veneration of the war dead. Gokoku shrines were often located on or next to military parade grounds, where memorial ceremonies were held before the shrines were formally established over the course of the imperial period. The Hiroshima Gokoku Shrine was also located outside to the south of the main bailey, on the western end of the western parade ground, until it was destroyed in 1945. Even after the war, Gokoku shrines remained important sites for commemoration throughout Japan, even though the U.S. occupation authorities tried to restrict their influence. When Emperor Hirohito visited Hiroshima in 1947, he addressed the public from a stage built on top of the former shrine grounds, with the A-bomb dome and a surviving shrine gate visible in the distance. Following the end of the U.S. occupation, the Hiroshima Gokoku Shrine was rebuilt in a much more prominent location in the center of the castle, with the bomb-damaged gate also moved to this new site. This relocation caused great controversy in Hiroshima, as the castle was now public land, and giving it over to what was now a private shrine conflicted with post-war laws about the separation of religion and state. Another wartime artifact is tucked away behind a row of trees just beside the current shrine. The remains of the Chugoku Military District Air Defense Headquarters bunkers are one of very few surviving structures on the site that attest to the former military function of the castle. The bunkers feature an informative plaque and a memorial focused on the atomic bombing, but also contain some information about the central role the castle played in Japan's war effort. The marginalization of the military past in Hiroshima is evident just to the north and east of the moat, where the Hiroshima Castle Moatside Park contains two small monuments in forested areas. One monument is dedicated to the fallen soldiers of the 11th Infantry Regiment, which was based in the castle to the east of the main bailey. The modern buildings that now take up the former site of the 11th Infantry Regiment can be seen here from the top of the castle keep. Another monument nearby is dedicated to the cadets of the Hiroshima Military Academy, who died on August 6, 1945. The school was established in 1898 and was located on the North Moat, a space now occupied by offices, residential buildings, and an elementary school, seen here from the top of the castle keep. Another area that has been completely transformed is the extensive land to the south of the inner moat. This includes the former Western Parade Ground, which took up much of the space seen here in the foreground, as well as several other military facilities. This same area is seen here in the distance from the top of the castle keep. As castles and other military sites were demilitarized, they came to host a variety of museums and public institutions that reflected the new democratic ideals. In Hiroshima, These structures include the Hiroshima Museum of Art, as well as the Hiroshima City Library, which has an outstanding collection of Japanese language resources on the city's history. Further west, there is a large athletic and pool complex, and sporting facilities were built in many castles throughout Japan in the 1950s. Just to the south is a children's science museum, which stands on the site of the Hiroshima Gokoku Shrine before it was destroyed and moved into the main bailey. The former shrine land now hosts a small park, which was also formerly the site of the People's Baseball Stadium, making the former castle grounds the cultural and sporting center of Hiroshima. The A-Bomb Dome and Peace Park are just across the street from the former baseball stadium. One very large but not particularly obvious artifact of the military history and the atomic bombing is the modern council estate around the castle and the Hiroshima Central Park. The site immediately west and north of the castle formerly contained an arsenal, military hospital, 5th Field Artillery, and other 5th Division facilities. After 1945, the area became a makeshift refugee camp that morphed into what became known as the A-Bomb Slum, and many survivors lived here in temporary shacks until the 1970s. We can see them here in this photograph from 1974. There were reports that some of these shacks were built using wood from the collapsed castle keep and other historic structures in the castle. Following a long struggle for recognition, as well as several fires, the slum was evacuated in the 1970s and its residents moved into the new council buildings in the castle area. Part of the former slum became parks that are now popular for cherry blossom viewings and parties. The park also contains some of the most significant memorials to the castle's wartime past. This is the memorial to the former military hospital, which features the preserved hospital gates and a large memorial with a plaque bearing the names of victims who died here in 1945. The site also serves as an A-bomb memorial, like many other memorials examined here, as well as the many memorials that dot the riverside leading down to the A-Bomb Dome. In Hiroshima, the tragedy of the atomic bombing and the subsequent resurrection of the city are inescapable. But there are many other stories to be told in this fascinating place, and the balance between narratives is often the source of controversy. I hope you have found this virtual tour of the modern history of Hiroshima Castle interesting. I highly recommend a visit to the city of Hiroshima and the castle to see the many sights for yourself. There is much more information on the modern history of Hiroshima Castle and Japan's many other castles in our book Japan's Castles and other publications on my website, olegbenish.com. For more information on post-war Hiroshima, please also see Rand's award-winning book, Hiroshima, The Origins of Global Memory Culture, also from Cambridge University Press. Thank you for watching.